Today is once again June 19th. Welcome to Big Book Daily. My name is Rob. I am an alcoholic. It is a thrill, honor, and joy to be here yet again. And today we have a new speaker named John E. from Lebanon, Tennessee, who has been sober since July 5th, 1989. So first of all, I want to thank Heather and Jan and my sponsor from the Get in the Car meeting. This meeting was originally recorded on June 12th, so not too long ago. And man, this is an interesting one because first of all, he talks about the value of the fellowship. And he even mentions you never know when your Ebby is going to show up. And buddy, that is so true. And so first he talks about the value of the fellowship and certain people that were in his life that kind of brought him to the fellowship. He also talks about his early childhood and his relationship with his father and how he got into some trouble. But one thing I loved is that when he describes his first AA meeting, he said it was like going to it was like the cantina scene in Star Wars. So I instantly grinned. Talked about how everybody was a little bit different, and he just never forgot his first AA meeting. And he talks about how our experiences are gift to each other. But one thing that stood out to me about 45 minutes, maybe 50 minutes into the share, he talks about the program of action. Because he's very forthright about his struggles, even in sobriety, 19 years in, as a matter of fact. And the selfishness caught up with him. And he knew he needed to work the steps to get to the deep-rooted stuff. And from that point on, he discovers that the program is a program of subtraction. And I'll let him explain that to you. And the umbilical cord analogy that he talks about, man, that is a gift that I'll never forget. I love his explanation of that. So stay tuned for that. I hope you all enjoyed this one. Thank you again for everybody involved in the car speaker meeting. And with that, my friends, if we're given another set of 24 hours, I look forward to seeing you right back here with our regular scheduled program tomorrow.
We are very excited to introduce our AA speaker tonight. We have John E. from Lebanon, Tennessee. John, take it away.
My name is John Evans, and my wife thinks I'm an alcoholic. Funny thing is, she's never seen me drink, and somehow she still knows in her core that I'm an alcoholic. I guess it's not just about the drinking. That's for certain. It's not just about the drinking. Thank you for the invitation. I forgot who invited me, but thank you. That's terrible manners, but sorry. Thank you. It was Heather, right? Joby, Heather. I'm terrible. And I don't mean that cavalierly. I do mean that. Thank you very much. There was a day in AA where not only did somebody not consider me to share for an hour, they wouldn't ask me directions to a 7-Eleven. So, do you guys have a 7-Eleven here? All right. What do you guys got? Sheetz, Wawa, Mapco? You guys got Mapco, right? Okay. I said okay because I just couldn't hear. I wasn't being smart aleck. I am from Lebanon. We moved there 4 years ago. I got trained how to say that. Do not show up in Lebanon and say Lebanon. They will instantly put you in probation. We moved down here after 50 years in Maryland, in the Washington, D.C. area, and my wife spoke here 6 months ago, and so I would have liked to have spoken a little bit closer to when she spoke so I could correct a couple things. I love having the last word. I don't know if that's important to you still, but it's kind of delicious sometimes. But I've learned to keep my mouth shut and have my last word somewhere else. But no, we loved coming up here, and you guys have a wonderful group. It's still monthly, right? Just once a month. My home group is the Three Legacy group. just an amazing group. To our new friend, I pray that you find a Three Legacy home group that's steeped in the traditions and the steps and service. And I like talking about it a lot because I didn't know this just because I was so, when I say ignorant, I'm not like being mean to myself. Like I was just void of the facts, ignorant when I got here. You know, there's a large difference in the success rate of somebody who comes in and dives into a home group and gets a service position and gets involved and makes it that group and the success of that group their responsibility, as opposed to someone who's just a frequent meeting attender. And that became really kind of obvious to me when I got sober in Maryland, like in this one particular AA clubhouse and in this one area, like that really wasn't part of the vernacular. People didn't like take pride. I mean, it was because there's so many meetings at this club. You know, there's a 9 a.m. and a noon and a 6 and an 8:30, and we had a 10:30 candlelight meeting. And so, early sobriety, I went to all of them because that's only, but there's a different kind of, the 6 o'clock is the guys that actually have jobs. They come after work, and the noon is the people who are unemployable, and the 8 or 9 a.m. is the old fogies, and the 10:30 is like the toxic newcomer I can't sleep meeting, and so each group was this different kind of entity, and so like it was a tradition's nightmare is what that club was, but they saved my life, and so anyway, that wasn't really part of my vernacular, and I stayed in that area for a long time, and then we moved up to Frederick County, which is just north of Montgomery County. It's one county up, and I had about 15 years or something like that, and in Frederick County, that was like then in Lebanon, like the first thing went, what's your home group? Like it was a merit badge, and it determined, I guess, your AA worth or something. And so I became kind of like resistant to it, you guys are doing it wrong. Anyway, it's just nonsense, how we get in here. And but then I got to meet one of my AA heroes, this guy Tom Ivester from Southern Pines, North Carolina. And I got to spend a lot of time with him in this one short 4-day period. I got to be his host at this thing, and that was like it was like the last year or two of him actually talking a lot in AA. If you're relatively new, or if you don't know that name, I beg of you to go on YouTube and listen to Tom Ivester. Tom Ivester, I don't know why I'm going down this path, but I am, was like the Bill Wilson of my era. I mean, he was a Southern gentleman. You couldn't find somebody on the planet to say something bad about Tom I. Tom I spoke, 48 weekends a year, which doesn't make him a hero or anything, but what was unique about Tom Ivester is you would find him at 2 o'clock in the morning of a conference that he spoke at Saturday night in the lobby talking with a newcomer, just complete, and he had this gift of when it was you and Tom, that's all there was. I get in a big room like this, and I blame it on my ADD, but I'm looking at Mitch pretending to talk about what we had for dinner, but I'm really listening to that conversation over there, and I can't really wait to be a part of, because they're talking about something more important over here. But Tom was just present, and but his kind of dying message was about becoming a member of a Three Legacy group and a home group, and because he said something that really shook me. He said, what makes my home group so great? Because I remember him asking me on this trip. He was like, "Tell me about the groups in your area, John." And I was like, "Oh man, we have some really good meetings." He's like, "Yeah, but tell me about the groups." And I was like, "What do you mean?" I didn't understand. I didn't. This is 15, 18, 20 years old. I had no difference. I mean, I understood kind of what he was talking about, but he said, "What made my group awesome is what we do between meetings," and that's a big difference, right? It's easy to come in here for an hour and behave ourselves and say some good stuff, but and that's very important, right, to be of service at our group. But what are we doing between the meetings is the sign of a really healthy group. And when we moved to Lebanon, there was a bunch of, as you know, everyone has invaded Tennessee from California, New York, and all these other states. So I apologize for that. But there was a bunch of, and I'm not really sorry because I love it here. But I'm sorry for those nasty people that come from New there was a bunch of people that couldn't find what they were looking for in Lebanon where we were. It seemed like the area was struggling for a group that had regular business meetings, that was going to follow their traditions, and there was a lot of recovery going on in the area, but there just wasn't a lot of strong three legacy groups, and just by accident we all fell together and started this group. And it was, in April we just had our 3rd anniversary, and every Thursday night we have 80 to 100 people, and if you're thinking about starting a group, I'm going to share with you a really awesome format. Get somebody, I will get to my story, I promise. Get somebody who has taken the 12 steps out of the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous. Ask them to come read 2 pages, because that's all we can pay attention for, and share on those 2 pages for 15, 20, 25 minutes, and that's the topic for the night. You can't mess that up. I promise you can't. I'm not just saying it because my home group, in 3 years, we've had, what's the math on that, 156 meetings? We haven't had one bad meeting. I'm telling you, we haven't. So, I don't know why I got on this public service announcement, but I just love Alcoholics Anonymous, and I love, because I've lived on both sides of that street, of just kind of being a frequent visitor to a bunch of different meetings, and not being accountable, and not feeling really plugged in with, even with a bunch of time, and I'm so grateful that the people that have come before me did not shoot their wounded. I've messed up a lot in AA. I mean, a lot. And, but whenever I would come back to these old timers, these guys that I would be seeking some guidance from, it didn't matter if I had asked them 10 times the same thing. Like what, they would always sit down with me, and it wasn't their job to decide if this was the time I was going to be willing. What does Bill say in our book? We worked with this guy over 6 times. Before I get into my story, I want to take a second. I know you guys don't go do chips, but Trent had 5 years yesterday. Throw your hand up, Trent. My plan was to announce that before I started, but I started thinking about myself, and just off I went. It was a good thought. I believe I was born with our disease of alcoholism. Some people kind of work their way into it, I guess, by drinking too much. I'm not sure. Wind up in the boardroom and say, I've had too much, and come to the A&A. I was born, at least with all the symptoms, restless, irritable, and discontent. Nothing was good enough for me. And I grew up in a regular old suburbia, about 10 miles outside of Washington, D.C. My parents were not wealthy people, but they were lucky enough to buy an area that was soon going to be a wealthy neighborhood. They just kind of lucked into buying the right place at the right time. They were both working class people. My dad owned a bar, and my mom painted houses for a living. But there was nothing they could do that was good enough. And there was a lot of craziness going on in my house. My friend Mike says, if you have our disease of alcoholism, I know 90% of your story. If you tell me you come from an alcoholic home, I know the other 10%. And it was mad. I was the youngest of 4 kids. And so by the time I got to my teenage years, my mom was, God bless her, did the awesome mom, but she was just done raising kids because she had me late, and the other 3 kids are worn her out, and she's paying all the bills, working 2 jobs, going to school, trying to keep up with the Joneses and keep my dad from parking the car upside down in the neighbor's yard, a perfect candidate for Al-Anon, but would, never consider that. And so I had all of the symptoms, that the doctor's opinion talks about so beautifully. But that doesn't make me an alcoholic. You can find a lot of those, call the IRS and try to get some help on the telephone, and you'll meet some people that perhaps might be restless, irritable, and discontent. No resentment there. I'm over it. But what makes me an alcoholic is that I have this allergy that once I have a couple, man, it's just over. Like 2 equals 22, and it's like, man, how did that happen? And I really didn't spend much time thinking about how did that happen, because that was the goal, right? Like when Bill talks about the alcoholic was almost always insanely drunk, that was the plan, that was the goal. I got introduced to alcohol as a little kid, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. My parents had these little little gatherings, and And they wouldn't clean up afterwards, very much. And so Saturday morning cartoons, you got a 2-hour window in the 70s to watch cartoons, 8 to 10, maybe 7 to 10. And then you're stuck with, I think it was called the 2000 Club. Jerry Falwell will be on there screaming at you. So you got to get up and watch your cartoons, and there'd be, half-empty beer cans and drinks and all the different stuff. And so, I'd go around to the beer cans and kind of figure out, is there a cigarette button there or not, because we smoked in the house. Everybody smoked, and, I was like, I don't think there is. You throw it back and like, oh, that's a cigarette. And, whatever, doesn't stop you from trying the next time. But I didn't have the... I wasn't thinking about that in kindergarten, to be honest, right? The obsession hadn't started. I wasn't thinking like, oh man, I know I'm 6, but when I get home, hopefully that beer can, I didn't have that yet. But when I was 11, my oldest sister, there's 4 years between each of us, so do that math. The oldest got married, and it was, I guess it's still the idea, right? Keeping up with the Joneses and all the rest. But in the 80s, it was just kind of different, right? Like nobody talked about their family problems, and it was just like we just all stuck our head in the sand. My dad would come home in a drunken rage and like literally burn the house down or shake the door off the hinges, because my mom locked him out, and threatening, I'll kill all, whatever, the madness was just insane. And we'd be sitting there, and you could see my old man at the front door just, getting ready to kill somebody. And my mom would say, just keep eating your dinner, kids. It's fine. Just keep eating your dinner. I swear to God. And the next morning we get up for breakfast. She'd eventually let him in, because she's a good Al-Anon. And you'd hear them, glasses, dishes, slamming doors, the threats, the this, I remember him saying, I'm leaving here, I'm never coming back, and me and my sister would be sitting on the top of the stairs listening. And we'd be like, oh, good. I swear to God, I hope he means it this time. And I know that's funny, but when you're 5 or whatever, 4 or 6, whatever the number is, you don't know how to process any of that, but you absorb all of it. I'll tell you that. And I'm not blaming him for my alcoholism by any means. But it was just madness. And so at this wedding, my mom's job was make sure my father doesn't ruin it. That's the goal of the wedding. They rented out, in Rockville, there was this place called the Strathmore Hall Mansion. Not that you care, but it was highfalutin. If you had a couple extra bucks, that's what you did. You rented out this mansion, big doings. And she was not prepared for young Johnny to make his debut into alcoholism. And my uncle thought it was a good idea to get me drunk. And I thought it was an even better idea. And that night, I drank until I got blackout, pissed my pants, throw up all over the wedding, drunk, and it was amazing. The next morning, the bride and groom had a breakfast at my uncle's country club. We're not country club folk, but we like to mooch off country club people. And the conversation became my behavior the night before. The bride and groom weren't too thrilled about it, but my brother thought it was hilarious. My mother did not, but I had this old, I tell a story all the time, it's the only story I got, so if you heard my story, I'm sorry. This old battle axe aunt, her name was Martha. She's just you know the word. She came in on her broom, and she said, he was so sick last night, I bet he'll never do that again. And I'm telling you, I remember what the restaurant looked like 3 or 4 years ago. And I remember where I was sitting. I remember the look on her nasty face. And I remember thinking, oh no, I'm doing that again. I am doing that again. My sponsor, when he tells a story, he tells this funny story about he became 10 foot tall and better looking, a better dancer, better lover, all this. Not me, Jack. I got to 0. I got from the -10 that I'd been walking around with. Somehow I was just born with this -10. I'm not good enough. They don't like me. I'm scared of everything. And it got me to just an even tide. And that was worth the price of admission. I was good to go with that. And I found some things that would accentuate my alcohol that took me to that other level. But she said, I bet he'll never do that again. And I was like, man, is that a Bloody Mary? I've never had one of those. Let's try it. And I was very fortunate that I had a lot of access to alcohol. The average neighborhood budding alcoholic, right? You know what you got to do. You got to either steal something from your parents, which, sooner or later they notice, right? That when they go in there for their biannual rum and coke, they notice everything's gone, right? So that's not a sustainable plan of alcoholism. Or you got to find some wino and give them $5 extra. And but at my house, my dad's story was he'd open a bar, and that doesn't go very well with alcoholism. The bar would go under, and lots of booze would come home. Our basement was about, whatever, I don't know what size, but half this room, the basement. And every time he would do that, they'd bring home cases and cases of alcohol. I mean, it was like being at Costco. I'm serious. It was amazing. And so when someone said, hey, let's go get messed up this weekend, I said, you called the right guy. Like we don't need to mess around with, leave your beer bong at home and your ping pong balls and the games. I know how to do this. I got the good stuff. What do you want? You want Jack? You want Jim Beam? Like, whatever. And off to the races I went very quickly. Holy moly. I got introduced to those things that accentuate alcohol. And, I think you can briefly talk about drugs from the podium. Our big book briefly talks about drugs. God's sake, Dr. Bob was taking sedatives, and Bill talks about being at the grave and smoking pot. I'm not sure exactly what that said, but for you big book readers, I know that's not what it says. I know. I like to stretch the truth a little bit. But man, because my problem with drinking was there was no off switch. I really think that our question of alcoholism is just simply defined at the beginning of We Agnostics. It says at the beginning of We Agnostics, we hope in the preceding chapters, so the doctor's opinion, Bill's story, more about alcoholism, and there's a solution. We hope in the preceding chapters we've made the distinction between the alcoholic and the non-alcoholic. So that is the purpose of those 4 chapters. It says, if when you honestly want to, you find you can't quit entirely, or, not and, it's a big difference in those 2 words, or if when drinking you have little control of the amount you take, you're probably alcoholic. And that was the case for me. And I could not drink 6, and I never really planned to have 6. I never said, hey, Mitch, let's go split a 6-pack. No, Mitch, let's leave school after first period so we get checked in. Let's go out in the woods with all the other losers and let's tear our backside up. And whatever happens, happens. And I'm good with that. And because, in my, I sound like such an old man. In my era, in the 80s, man, there was just there was no accountability. There was no tracking on your iPhone, or else my mother would be like, boy, you spent a lot of time in the woods, there wasn't even beepers, you know what I mean? It's just, you came home if you wanted to eat dinner, and if you didn't, the next morning they'd call and see if you slept over at a friend's house. I'm swear to you, that's the way it was. And and plus what was going on in my family, didn't help any. And I grew up in this area where the most advanced recovery program they had was developed by Nancy Reagan. Just say no. And that did not seem like a plan of recovery that was pretty, doable for me. Why would you say no? And when Bill says, the alcoholic thinks his life is the only normal one, I got that at 13. I felt that way at 13 years old. I was like, why is everybody else doing the right thing? Why are they going to school? Because this area of well-to-do of Montgomery County, there was no failures in school. They just kept pushing me on to the next grade. If you were breathing and you showed up at the first day at school, you went to the next grade. I swear to God, that's the case. This is true. It's funny, but it's tragic as well. When I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, the first time at 16, but when I came and stayed at 17, the last book I had read before the big book Alcoholics Anonymous, which I didn't really read for many years in here, but the last book I had read was Curious George Goes to the Circus. It's funny unless it's you know what I mean? And, they'd give us these standardized tests, with the little bubbles things, and I would color in stick figures, and towards the end of my toxicity, I would leave other 2-word, 7-letter messages, bank, you, and I was as just defiant as they got, and I'm getting in trouble all the time. I can't make it through school. I'm in summer school all the time and night school all the time. And it's just a mess, man. Things are crazy at home. And I can't keep a job. Every job I get fired for stealing, because I always apply for cash register jobs. There was, because back then it was like 90% cash, 10% credit card. And I was really good with the cash register. I'm really good at math still today. I know that a 12-pack of beer at $9.99 with Maryland taxes, $10.49. And I bring up like every other transaction, and every other transaction would go in my pocket, and because they were grossly underpaying me. It wasn't fair. I knew the markup they had on this stuff. That seemed egregious to me. They pay $3.99 for this case, and they're charging $12.99. That's, I'm redistributing the wealth and kind of Robin Hood of the beer deli, and so I'd get fired, and so I do what everyone else does, and I'm stealing money from my parents all the time. I don't have time to tell this whole story, but I stole thousands of dollars from my old man. He owned this bar. I am going to tell the story because it tells you about my alcoholism. So this last bar was this crappy old bar in this terrible part of D.C., across from the old soldiers' home on Upshur Street, not that you care. And a couple times when he would leave the bar, his car would get shot at. There was literally bullet holes in this old Cadillac. Don't start yawning now, man. That's not fair. I saw that. Come on. We got a half hour. And they were like putty on the side. Like there were bullet holes in his car, and it was because they were trying to get the money bag. Because back in the day, you'd have these huge canvas zipper bags, and you'd go to the bank, and there was a drawer that came down. It was called the night depository, and you'd stick the bag in, and kind of like they still have the post office, and you'd push it back up, and whoop, and would go into their magic little safe. But since he started getting shot at, he decided that was a bad plan, and he'd come home with these money bags. It's good for me. And so I started stealing what I thought I deserved out of these money bags, but that wasn't quite enough, and so I thought, I had an idea that, if there's $1,500 in here, I can't really take $300, because that's a 20%, right? You could probably get away with 30, 40, 50. He might think, I miscounted last night. I had too much to drink. It was 2 o'clock in the morning, but nobody miscounts by 200 or 300. And so I thought, man, I'll just take the whole bag. He'll think he came home drunk. He'll think I left it at the bar. Or he'll think he left it in the car and he'll think something so crazy, because he'll never think that one of his children took the whole bag. It's almost one of those things where it's like, tell such a big lie that they have to believe you, because you would say, nobody could ever make that up. And so I did not get caught the first time. And I wish I could tell you that I had some crack problem. This was at 13 years old, right? I was not under the lash of crack or heroin or crystal meth, that made me go do that. I wanted to be the big shot at the bus stop. I rolled up with my 2 homies and $1,500 cash, which in 1984 or 5 was a lot of money. I said, hey man, let's skip this school. Let's go down to the mall, buy everybody a leather jacket. I'm a big shot, and I did. And so a couple weeks go by and I didn't get caught. Nobody even asked me about it. There wasn't even a conversation about it. I got over. So I didn't get caught, so what did I do? I did it again. And I didn't get caught, and so what did I do? I did it again. 3rd time's a charm. My mom opens up my closet, and there's 12 pairs of Air Jordans that she had not purchased, and I'm not the brightest thief in the world. And at that point, my father's and mine relationship ended. He said, listen, you're dead to me. I know I have to house you and clothe you until you're 18 and feed you, but don't talk at me, don't look at me. You're dead to me. And I gave him the middle double fingers and said, man, you've been dead to me a long time. And that was the beginning of a 5 or 6 year run of I just don't care. I'm not blaming that on him. I promise you that. Not in the slightest. I'm just telling you my story. And So because I couldn't keep a job, boy, that was a long way getting back to the job. I couldn't keep a job, and I couldn't steal anymore. I mean, I'd walk in the house and my grandmother would clutch her purse. The woman that loved me the most on the planet, my hero, the greatest person I've ever met, I would walk in the house and she'd go. And so I do what we do. I joined the Young Entrepreneur Club of marijuana sales, and I wasn't very good at it. I should have been more into the research R&D side of it. And in this, I need to get sober, but during this time period, it's rough, man. I got 12-step. My first Ebby shows up. I'm in night school class, and I'm blitzed out of my mind because the principal had told me, he said, can you come? Everybody made an exception for me, no matter, it's just the era. At first I thought they always made exceptions for me because they really liked me. That's not the case. They made exceptions. I didn't know this until I was 20 years sober. Some of us don't learn very quick. They made exceptions for me because they did not want me around another year. They wanted to get rid of me. I just thought they liked me. And I don't know if any of you suffer from that degree of self-centeredness, but I do. And so he said, hey man, can you come the next 11 days of school? Because you have already exceeded the maximum unexcused absences in the state of Maryland. But we're going to make an exception for you. If you can show up to all 11 of those classes, we will give you credit and you can go to the next grade. This is the end of 11th grade or something like that. And I hate night school, and I really hate summer school. I'm like, yeah, man, I'll be there. And I can pass a lie detector test. When I say that, I mean it. And then what happens on day 2, I see Mitch in the hallway, and he has a better idea. Mitch says, I got a bottle. What do you say? I got a bag. What do you say? And I think I've changed my mind. What happens in my brain is I go, 11 days, that's a lot. And then I go, you know what? Night school was pretty good last year. That cute girl was there. And summer school wasn't bad. That guy had that good dope. Maybe he'll be there. So I say, screw it. And so I'm in night school. That's how I wound up in night school. And this guy, John G., I would love to know if he's alive and see him. He comes up to me during the break. Back then, you could smoke in school property. It was glorious. And this is the truth. 14 years old, if you brought a note from your mother to school that you could smoke on school property, you could. You could go out in the back and smoke with everybody else. I mean, there'd be teachers out there bumming lights from you and stuff. 13, 14 years old. So we're out there smoking cigarettes. And he says, hey, man, after this class, we're going down to the Rockville Metro Club for an AA meeting. Do you want to go? I'm telling you, I had never talked to this cat in my life. I don't know if it was my attitude or my aroma, but he was not asking anybody else that was out there smoking. He was not passing out field trip permission slips for community service. I guess he had some crazy sponsor that beat this idea in his head, you got to find a new guy to work with. And he identified me as a possible candidate. I'm not sure how. And I just had this really bad stretch of bad breaks and misunderstanding with the police department. I got arrested 3 times by the same cop with the same friend on the same street in the same car within a 6-week period of time and racked up 16 felonies. And it's a gross overcharging of what the facts were. Which is a whole pathetic story in and of itself. So the heat's on is my point. And I'm really good at being good enough long enough until the world stops watching, and then I go do what I want to do. I'd already been, faking some piss tests, and the world would, leave me alone. I go do what I wanted to do. And so I had, and back then, AA was running TV commercials if you stayed up late enough. And my father had a period of forced sobriety. He had a liver transplant and decided he probably ought not drink for a year. And then I got a new liver I can drink. Makes sense to me. And died drunk. But there was some talk about the A&A, and I thought, this would be good. This would be good for me. And so back then they didn't have the ankle bracelets that we have today. You guys have those in Knoxville, right? The GPS monitors. otherwise known as the Irish Rolex. But I was on house, I was released on my own recognizance to my mother. And I called my mother up and I said, hey, you're not going to believe this crazy thing happened. This guy wants me to go to an A&A meeting. She said, please go, click, and hung up. And this guy dragged me to this A&A. It was a 10:30 candlelight meeting at the Rockville Metro Club. It was the wildest thing I've ever seen. There was every walk of life in there. The best description I've ever heard of it was like Star Wars. You know the bar scene in Star Wars? Just every walk of life in there, man. Bikers and hookers and lawyers and, accountants and homeless people. And, Chewbacca was nodding off in the corner. And my future soulmate, Princess I Want to Lay You, was sitting over here. And, her shoe was duct taped, but she was a mess. But, I think she was looking at me. And we were only there like 5 minutes ahead of time, so I really didn't know what was going to happen. They cut the lights off, and there was a disco ball. They had a dance there every Friday night. They turned the disco ball on, and the smoke was so thick in the meetings, you had to count the tiles to get back to your chair if you got back up. I'm telling you, like it gave new meaning to stop, drop, and roll. And I had no idea what you guys were talking about. But I tell you about that story. One is, you never know when your Abby's going to show up. But the second part is that I knew I was in the right place right away. And what made it so different for me was my entire life, people have been wagging their finger at me. Everybody in authority, my grandmother, my aunt, my mom, the principal, the judge, the cops, the guidance counselor, all the therapists my mother drugged me to. They all say, you could have done this, you should do this, you did. And nobody in AA did that. Because in AA, you cannot argue with experience. That's all we really have. I mean, we have some fancy AA speakers that are really incredible communicators that can explain to you the 11th step in a dimension that I could never, right? But what we really have is our experience, our own unique God-given experience. And that's our gift to each other. And so when people would share what they were like, I couldn't deny that that's me. They would share, this is how I drank, this is how I did it. I was like, yeah, that's me. And then they would share what happened, which is the 12 steps. And that's la la land. But then that last, that was unbelievable to me. I remember sitting there reading the steps, came to believe, okay, all right, whatever, came to believe, made a decision, no, I'm not sure about that. Inventory, no, I'm not doing that. And, but then they didn't share what their life was like, they just showed me what their life was like today. And it was different than mine. They had some superpowers that I did not have. They could walk into a room and not look at their shoes. They could embrace each other in a hug that was not beating each other on the back. It wasn't that. They embraced each other. They told each other they loved each other. They were able to cry. They were just real people. They had this glow about them that I couldn't understand. And that really shook me, but I wasn't ready. And some time goes by, and I get in front of the judge because those charges happened so close together. We were able to put all those into one court case. I was a few months shy of being 18 years old. And back then, there was no conversation about trying you as an adult. And the judge said, you got two choices. You can go do 18 months at the James Hickey Reformatory School. And I had heard what the James Hickey Reformatory School was. It was juvie jail. Or, he said, the state of Maryland, in their wisdom, has opened the state's first recovery high school. If you'll go there for 6 months, I'll suspend your sentence. And look, we're not bright, but we're not stupid, right? 6 months in rehab, 18 months in juvie jail. Not a hard, right? And this was like in March or April was the court case, and they had an opening in July, which is 2 or 3 months away, and I'll agree to do anything 3 months from now. You know what I mean? Just leave me alone today, let me get my freak on. Okay, I'll go in July. Can I borrow $12? You know what I mean? Like, let me just leave me alone. I've already mastered the 1 day at a time program, right? I mean, it's so funny. We're out there drinking and drugging, and it's a 1 hour at a time program sometime, right? Our way of life. But then we get in here, and somehow that's not doable. we got to figure out 12 months from now. Shoot, on the way up, I'm asking Mitch to figure out a decision I got to make a year from now, right? Like, anyways, so I agree to go, and I walk into this treatment center. Oh my God, this can't be right. July 5th, 1989, and thanks to you guys, I haven't had a drink since. And I love how my friend Peter says, I was separated from alcohol. You know, and he says that in a way, not in a righteous, like God selected him. He says it in a way of like, he's not taking any credit. Because I didn't walk in that treatment center July 5th, 1989 and say, you know, in 36 years and change, I really hope I'm going to be in Knoxville at the Ebenezer Scrooge Church and telling my story. You know, God's terrible. I don't know why I said that. Just kidding, God. God likes my sense of humor. It can't be that offensive. There's snow globes behind me. So this was your idea. So man, I zipped right through that 6-month treatment program, and in 16 months they let me out. And thank God they kept me that long. Thank God. Thank God. You'd have somebody else here tonight. And their program of recovery at this place was don't drink and go to a lot of meetings. And back in Washington, D.C. in that time, there was tons of meeting with young people. I mean, there was young people, AA was thriving. And I mean, there wasn't a lot of like 12 steps and traditions and recovery happening, but there was a lot of meetings and a lot of other stuff. And I was fine with that. And so my best road dog, I'm going to give you a microcosm of my early sobriety. My number one road dog, who I spent 60 months treatment with, called me on a Halloween night and said, hey man, I cannot do this anymore. I can't take this. I'm going back out tonight. Do you want to go? And I was so terrified and I was so surprised. I said, I'm going to call you right back. Didn't have the courage to tell him no. I knew what telling him yes was. I hung up the phone. I made my way over to my sponsor's house and did the best third step I could at the time. And we did a terrible fourth step that night, a little Reader's Digest version, and a shallow and cowardly fifth step. And because he knew I was in trouble. And I didn't get much relief from that version of the steps. And so I'm just kind of bouncing around AA. I can't keep a job. I just don't know what to do with myself. And the first Gulf War breaks out. I thought, I know what I'll do. I come from this long line of military heroes. My grandfather was a 2-star admiral in the Navy for 36 years. And I said, I'm gonna join the military. I'm gonna be a war hero. There's a war going on. I got an idea. And I went down to recruit. This is my early sobriety. I went down, I enlisted, no questions asked. I enlisted, I signed the paperwork, all within 30 minutes. I went to my sponsor's house and asked him if it was a good idea. You sponsor some people like that? Hey, boss, you're not going to believe what I just did. Yeah, I am. Yeah, I can believe it. And I remember the look on his face, and not like I needed his permission, but like there was no seeking going on. And he said, I just got one question for you. And I was expecting something like, hey, what branch? Or like, you know, what specialty did you choose? He said, did you tell him the truth on your application? And I said, well, not exactly. And so that war was over in 7 days, but they still wanted me to enlist. And a couple months later, they shipped me out to San Diego, shaved my head, sent all my belongings home. And back then, still today, they send all your stuff home, shave your head, and they march you for about 48 hours on about 30 minutes sleep. And they bring you to a large auditorium with 1,000 recruits, maybe 500 recruits. Big base in San Diego. And they let you fall asleep while you're sitting there Indian style. They purposely wait until you start, nodding. And then an NCO comes in and raises hell, kicks a metal garbage can down the aisle. What in the hell are you guys doing asleep? Blah, blah. And he says, today is the moment of truth day. If you lie to the United States Navy, we will find out sooner or later. It's going to take 3 to 6 months. Remember, this is pre-Google, pre-internet. There's no case search going on the internet, right? But we will find out, and if we find out, you will get a dishonorable discharge. It will stay with you the rest of your life like a bad venereal disease. But if you're honest with us today, we will let you go home with a general discharge, no harm, no foul. Well, I already don't want to be here. My vision of being a war hero was gone, and in that time frame of when they sent me to boot camp, this girl started paying attention to me. And so I'm sitting in the middle of 500 troops. I swear to you this is true. I throw my hand up. I'm telling you, it never happened before or after. He was so shocked. He says, "What is it?" I said, "Well, where do you go if you lied about all four?" And because he had asked a question, I got ahead of myself. He asked this question. He said, "If you lied about drugs, go into that corner. If you lied about your arrest record, go into that corner. If you lied about psychiatric care, go into that corner. If you lied about something else, go into that corner." And I wanted to know, where do you go if you lied about all four? And he said, "You come with me." And he literally got behind me, marched me down to the commandant's office, and in 30 minutes, I was in the Navy brig. So of my own power on self-rule and riot, the best I can do serving my country is about 48 hours. And, those of you that have my phone number, you do not need to call me on Veterans Day and thank me for my service. That joke is taken by about a half dozen others. And anyways, and I don't say that to make light of our military. My son is in the Army right now. I honor our vets. I did not at the time by my behavior. And so I came home, and I didn't have any, I just bounced around, and God, this thing. And I found a wife, and then we got divorced in a year. My wife left on a Monday. My next wife, Renee, who spoke here, we went on a date on Wednesday, and Friday she moved in. And thanks to Alcoholics Anonymous, in October we'll be married 30 years. And not without a lot of roller coaster rides. I would not recommend that exact recipe for building a healthy marriage and recovery. It's just my story. And I've just made so many mistakes in recovery. I was a young guy, and I'm chasing the American dream, and this is the only reason people ask me to speak, is I got off the beam at about 16, 17, 18 years. I'm trying to conquer the world. I'm trying to buy a bigger house, a bigger car, and that's part of the American experience, right? Like acquire, conquer, accumulate, right? All that type of stuff. There's nothing wrong with that, except if you're an alcoholic, as Bill says with our character defects, these characteristics, we take them to the extreme, And so, I'm coming to meetings late. I got to leave early too, and I don't have time to sponsor anybody. I don't have a service position. And I bought this business I had no business buying, pardon the pun. And was not qualified. I wasn't educated, but it seemed like a good idea at the time. My house is mortgaged, the tilt on it. I owe this guy $600,000 for this business. 2008 happens, the market crashes, and this business crashes. And the business was crashing anyways because it was under poor management. And but the two together was not a good recipe. And man, I got spiritually sick. I was so full of fear. I had garbage bags full of mail I could not open. In this 1 year period of time, my house was in foreclosure. My lights were being turned off. I went bankrupt. I got arrested in sobriety for not paying speeding tickets. They don't like that in Maryland. And I traded the thing that I valued most, and that was the fidelity to my wife. And she, of course, she found out. If you're living that type of life, it's not if they find out, it's when they find out. And I hit a bottom in recovery that I had never hit before. And then in that time frame, I fell off this ladder from really high up, and I broke my arm at 90 degrees, like Joe Theismann's leg, and my pelvis in 3 places. It keeps getting bigger every time I tell my story. And I'm stuck in this lazy boy chair for like 6 or 8 weeks. And literally, she's got to bring me something to urinate in. And this woman that I've just, shattered her life and everything that she dreamed of. And I just hit this bottom in sobriety, and a couple months, some time goes by, and I can't figure out why I did what I did. And I'm just full of so much guilt, shame, remorse. And 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm on the kitchen floor crying like a schoolgirl. And I hadn't cried in 18 years. I hadn't cried since I got sober. And the best thing I can come up with by myself running my own program of recovery, 18 years sober, is rifle or shotgun. It was an easy decision. Rifle goes through the ceiling and kills one of my kids. You're going right to hell. All right, shotgun's the answer. Not much logic involved there, but that was my thinking. And I was like, AA just doesn't work. Look at my life. Look at my life. I'm almost 19 years sober. Look at my life. There's no good area of my life. I mean, my kids and my wife were wonderful, but there's nothing good in my life that I was in charge of that was good. There was nothing that I managed well. Nothing. And I'm not being extreme. I mean, nothing. Nothing I managed well. And then I heard this voice in the back of my head that sounded a lot like my first sponsor, and it was like, dummy, you're not doing AA. You haven't been doing AA for a year or two. I was like, oh my God, that's actually accurate. Moment of clarity. And I said, the greatest AA prayer I've ever said since, and it was, God, fix me or kill me. Just do one of them quick. I'll do anything. And I got introduced to this guy that had this crazy notion of working the steps of that big book. I called this clown 1,000 miles away. I said, hey man, you don't know me from Adam, but I heard you talking about the steps in a way, the big book way, that I'm not familiar with. And I'm not going to make my 20th anniversary if you don't take me through the steps, or you do this 4-step with me. And I'm telling you, that's exactly what he said. He said, I don't know about the God of your understanding, but this morning I got off my knees and I asked God to send me somebody to help, and I guess you're it. Now, I didn't know he said that prayer every day, but that in particular day, little baby Jesus in his golden fleece diaper had aligned the world. And any Ricky Bobby fans? And I figured we're in Tennessee, you guys will get that. And then God loved me back to health, man. And he's still my sponsor 20 years later, 19 years later. This guy saved my life. And Big Book saved my life. He just was the instrument, but you know what I'm saying. You know what we do here is these 12 steps are divinely designed for our new friend, welcome. These 12 steps are not about making us perfect or holy or righteous. They're not about helping you figure out the right way. I've heard it best described as this is a program of subtraction, not addition. Each one of these steps is designed to remove a certain part of my defects that are blocking me from this God, this power that has existed since the moment I was born. Bill says that on 55. Inside each man and woman, deep down inside, is this fundamental idea of God. And I love that concept. So if you're new here, we're not here to sell you our belief in God. We're here to sell you the path that we took that led us to this power that transformed our lives. My life has been incredibly transformed, not just 18 years ago, in the last 4 years going back through the steps. This is a never-ending trove of this power that provides this love that's absolutely indescribable. I'm going to say this and I will shut up. My sponsor does this love meditation where we send love to people that we're concerned about, and he envisions this kind of beam of love from God coming to him, and he's like the mirror, whoever's doing it, they're the mirror, and you bounce it back to the other person. It's just a way of considering, it's not like there's any power behind it, but it transforms how you think about that person. It's particularly powerful if you've got a resentment against somebody or you owe an amends to somebody. I like to envision this, instead of this beam, I like to envision this umbilical cord from me to God. I don't think I can ever be separated from this power of God, right? I think in New Pair of Glasses, he says the same thing. I can feel like I'm separated from this power, but I don't think I can really separate myself until I've taken my last breath. Every time that I have surrendered to that power or sought that power, I have found that power. And so I like that umbilical cord. Who was supposed to tell me 5 minutes? Okay. But I think we're over. Do I have 5 minutes? No. Can I get 10? I like choosing this umbilical cord. And then why I like that is when my wife had our second child, we're in the delivery room, my first birthing experience, our second child, and you know how that looks, right? The stickers and the things are going to the monitors, monitoring the baby's heartbeat. Beep, 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 beep. Very important. And all of a sudden, the monitor goes beep, baby's heartbeat stops. Nurses, doctors, everyone comes rushing in, carts. They push me out of the way. They're getting ready to slice her open right there, crash C-section. They brought the doctor in. We hadn't seen the doctor all day, This old school delivery nurse comes in and she ass checks him out of the way. She says, hold on, doc, give me a second. She was calling the shots in this delivery room. She said, come here, baby. She said, roll over on all four. She said, stick your hand out there and stick your leg out there. It was like pregnant twister. And in like 15 seconds, the baby's heartbeat came back. Baby's born beautiful. She's my best friend today. We talk every day. She's the love of my life, second love of my life. And next day, we go to leave the hospital, and I saw this nurse. I said, hey, what in God's name happened in there? She said, oh, that's easy. Sometimes what happens is, right before the baby comes out, they get so scared, they squeeze their own umbilical cord so hard, they stop their own flow of blood. They stop their own heartbeat. That's how much they can squeeze. And I thought, that is exactly what we do in here. That is exactly what I've done my entire life. I was born with this umbilical cord, this power of God has been there since the beginning. And day by day, in my out there ripping and running, even in sobriety, I will think it's a good idea to start squeezing. I'll get full of fear, lust, self, whatever it is, and I will start squeezing. And I have to go through these steps one at a time to release this grip. But it's not a one-time event. I have to be in the center of this thing. I have to have men in my life that I'm transparent with. My sponsor is a wonderful man, a wonderful speaker, knows the book. His greatest gift to me is his transparency, sharing me with his brokenness, right? In the back of our book, it says we are brothers in our defects. And so I have to have these men in my life. I have to be in the center of a home group so people can look at me and say, hey, you're squeezing, right? If not, I'll be alone in the woods with my back turned, squeezing so hard that the only thing I'll know how to do is to take a drink. I love you guys. I love Alcoholics Anonymous. Thank you for having me.